The fight for intellectual diversity in education is no longer isolated on college campuses. Indoctrination has quickly become a hallmark trait of the American high school experience. In this episode of On the Frontlines, we're headed back to high school. There's a sentence I never thought I'd say, to learn just how one-sided things have gotten nationwide. We'll sit down with Avery, a Minnesota high school student fighting with everything she has for intellectual diversity in her community, and meet a California high school teacher who's indoctrinating the next generation. All this and more, I'm Isabel Brown, and this is On the Frontlines.
On campus, the left tries to silence us.
There's a lot of liberal indoctrination.
Universities don't stand for objective truth.
Insulting us, threatening us.
We are on the front lines.
Hi, I'm Avery Severson and I'm 16 years old and I go to school at White Bear Lake High School in Minnesota. I grew up in a conservative family with Christian values, and that's why I wanted to start a Turning Point USA chapter at my school. I knew I would get some pushback, but I didn't know I'd get as much pushback as I got. I'm Avery Severson and this is On the Frontlines.
Please welcome Avery Severson from White Bear Lake High School in Minnesota. Avery, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us more about how you found out about Turning Point USA and what inspired you to start a chapter at your high school.
So like a year and a half ago, my dad showed me a video of Candace Owens, and then I found a video of Candace and Charlie together, and then I found Turning Point, and the same night I signed up to start a chapter at my school.
What inspired you to encourage more people in your high school community to get involved through starting a chapter?
There was no conservative club on campus, and I could see that the teachers, they were being biased, and I saw that and I wanted to bring a conservative point of view to campus.
So right away, after you decided to start a chapter and go through the process of getting it approved, there were some pretty outrageous lies shared about you in your high school community, that you were sending racist messages around high school. Tell me more about that.
So when I was at a driver's ed behind the wheel, I wasn't on my phone because I was driving, and when I got home, I checked my phone and I saw that people were accusing me of sending these racist messages to a group of students and then a student individually, and I wasn't even on my phone at all during that time, and it was around the time that we almost got the amount of students we needed to start the club at my school.
What did the messages that they were accusing you of say? Do you know?
There was just a lot of, it was like stuff about George Floyd, about doing the same to him, to them, and it was just racial slurs, stuff like that, things I would never think of saying.
Who was coming up with these accusations? Was it students in your class?
It was the student that got the messages sent to her that then accused me, and then the Black Excellence Club at my school started spreading the rumors around on social media.
So after all of these allegations came out that you were sending racist messages around the school, obviously the administration found that the entire situation was a hoax. Did they immediately deny your chapter, or did they just keep you on the hook moving forward?
They didn't deny or approve, and right now it's partially approved for now until our first meeting.
Partially approved? What does that mean?
I'm not sure. I don't think that's happened to any other club on campus before. But until our first meeting, we don't know if they're going to officially approve it or not.
As someone looking for a sense of community with conservative ideas at your high school and really seeing none of that before you started a Turning Point chapter, how did that feel to be completely brushed aside by your administration?
It felt just like they didn't care. They didn't want different perspectives, and they didn't want those students that didn't feel heard to be heard, and they didn't want to have a community for those types of students.
And in terms of these allegations, too, I can imagine it was very difficult to be accused of saying such horrible things. Did that have an impact on your friendships, your relationships at school, and your academics?
Yeah, a lot of people don't talk to me there. I would walk down the hallway, people would yell racist at me. I had an escort bringing me to and from class, but he often forgot to pick me up or bring me to the next class, so I would be walking down the hallway by myself with a whole community of people who thought that I was the one that sent those messages.
What do you wish those people knew about you in real life, who you really are?
I wish that they would know that being a conservative doesn't mean you're a racist, and they took knowing that I was a conservative and just assumed that I was someone that would send those messages, even though that's not being a conservative means.
I think there's this assumption in the political sphere right now, and especially in the conservative movement, that this indoctrination that we're seeing at school and the push for leftism is only happening on college campuses. Obviously, we know from your story that's not the case, but what can you share with us about the current high school experience that is an inside look into this indoctrination?
At my high school, you will see Black Lives Matter signs around the whole school. Any other signs are not up. There's no All Lives Matter, nothing like that is put up. You will see teachers wearing political shirts around. During Pride Month, teachers would wear full rainbow clothing all day. There was no, and conservative teachers, you wouldn't know they were there.
Wow. How does it feel to be a conservative high school student in high school today?
It feels like the administration and teachers don't support you. There's a small number of conservatives that are willing to say they're conservative, and even when they do say it, people get attacked. There was a kid that got milk thrown on him, and that's another reason. That happened before the Turning Point chapter was brought to my school, so that's another reason why I wanted to bring something like that there.
Do you ever feel like conservative ideas or values are discussed in your classes or at school outside of the idea of a Turning Point USA chapter?
Teachers would bring up their point of view, and students sometimes would try to provide a different point of view, a conservative point of view, and the teacher they don't acknowledge it.
Throughout this process, so many people found out about you and your story and what's happening on high school campuses today because you boldly gave some interviews about the experience and what it meant to be accused of such horrible things as a high school student with Fox News and on the Charlie Kirk Show. That's how I found out about your story. What was it like to embrace such bravery and boldness in standing for what you believe in on a very large public national scale?
It was scary at first, but I realized that if I wasn't going to, maybe someone else wouldn't. And it's really hard to be falsely accused of something when it's not you and there's no proof of it being you, and everything kind of gets taken away.
You're headed back to school, hopefully, with COVID restrictions. We're still waiting to hear about that in the next few weeks, but obviously you're not done fighting for what you believe in and your values. What's next, and what's your next plan for you and the Turning Point USA chapter at your high school?
We've started planning events in our community with local speakers, and we're working with other Minnesota high school chapters to create bigger events that can bring more students to Turning Point.
Do you have any words of encouragement or advice for other high school students in particular who may be facing this type of backlash or false accusation? How did you get through that, and what would you want them to know?
I think the biggest thing is to know who your friends are and keep those people close to you when you're going through something like that, and don't worry about what others say about you, only the people that you would take advice from or that you trust completely, and to keep going because the movement needs it.
Yes, it does. Having gone through this experience now and receiving these hateful accusations, losing a lot of friendships along the way, walking through the hallways feeling completely alone as you shared with us, would you still go through all of it all over again?
Yeah, I would.
Why?
I think it brought me a different perspective and gave me a lot of new opportunities that I wouldn't have otherwise if this didn't happen.
What do you think we can do as Turning Point USA and a conservative movement to fight more for high school students like you when it comes to this indoctrination and what you're learning in the class?
I think teachers are the biggest problem, and the curriculum that's being taught isn't really the curriculum. Teachers like to go off the book. So really just trying to educate those students of actual values and principles of the conservative movement, because they're not going to learn it at school.
What would you say is the most outrageous thing you've ever been told in a high school classroom?
We were told, this was at a middle school, and we were taught who was the oppressor or oppressed, and that Christians had a better opportunity at school because they got holidays off because they had the calendar that matched up.
So that makes them an oppressor.
School. Yes.
Welcome to 2021, everyone. I want off this planet. Oh my gosh. Avery, thank you so much for being such a bold leader for conservative ideas in your high school community. We are so excited to see how you use your voice moving forward, and I know it's just the beginning for you. So thanks for joining us on The Frontlines.
Thank you.
Coming up next, we are jumping into more crazy stories from the front lines of our high school campuses. Don't go anywhere because you'll want to hear this. We say all the time in the conservative movement that what happens on college campuses never stays on college campuses. But the insanity of leftism we associate with the college experience doesn't just graduate with students into the adult world. It also trickles down into every level of education leading up to college, too. Today, high school students and even younger children are experiencing the same ideological indoctrination we've seen on college campuses for the past several years. We are living in a time where truth has been replaced with lies, and a controversial belief is a hate crime. If this isn't identified and stopped in its tracks now, there's no telling how impactful the left will be for Generation Z. It's time for your State of Campus. In eastern Pennsylvania, Pennridge High School community members are spreading some outrageous lies about Turning Point USA. After the school recognized Turning Point USA as an official campus club, a local teacher and columnist recently penned an op-ed called Turning Point USA, a Trojan horse of right-wing extremism for Pennridge students. Because promoting free speech and capitalism is definitely right-wing extremism. Sure. The author of the piece uses press releases from the Anti-Defamation League and the Southern Poverty Law Center as sources, red flag, to paint a picture of Turning Point USA as one of racism, bigotry, and white nationalism. He writes, there is a cultural rot within this group that attracts, breeds, and promotes extremism. The threat of having Pennridge kids fall down the TPUSA rabbit hole is that these students grow up to follow in the footsteps of Bucks County's current cadre of far-right conservative thought leaders who are transphobic, follow QAnon, call the Proud Boys patriotic young men, tell newspapers that Democrats hate America, and write columns that blame feminism for mass shootings. Who is blaming feminism for mass shootings? I thought that only angry white men did that. Also, if you haven't noticed already, the left only has 3 insults: racist, homophobic, white supremacist. Wow, how original. This just goes to show you that institutions have created a system where it is a thought crime to question your teacher. So allowing a club that differs from a public high school's opinions is simply out of the question. Heading south to Dallas, Texas, Lake Highlands High School's valedictorian, Paxton Smith, went dramatically off script during her valedictory address at last semester's graduation to discuss the abortion industry and its importance to young women everywhere. As if you needed any more proof of how successful the left has been at infiltrating high school education with lies and deceit, here's just a few words Paxton shared during her speech.
I am terrified that if my contraceptives fail, I am terrified that if I am raped, then my hopes and aspirations and dreams and efforts for my future will no longer matter.
She dismissed her pre-approved graduation speech on the influence of media to specifically include this rhetoric, since the Texas heartbeat bill, banning abortions after a heartbeat can be detected, was introduced in the state legislature last spring. Here's the thing though, while Paxton's passion for the subject is obvious, the content of her speech is all wrong. The truth is, an unplanned or unexpected pregnancy does not steal your hopes and aspirations and dreams and efforts for your future. To think that having a child stops you from achieving your ambitions is a total lack of perspective on life and parenthood. The only part of abortion that is dehumanizing or taking away bodily autonomy is through ending the life of an innocent preborn human being who does not have a voice in the process. Your war on women is not allowing potential women to be born. How is that pro-woman? To be truly pro-woman, one would never subject a baby or mother to the terror and harm that is the abortion industry. If you want to teach kids the truth, it starts by telling them the reality of abortion, and Lake Highlands High is not helping. I don't even blame Paxton for believing this with so much passion, because this is probably all she's ever been taught about abortion. This is why indoctrination is so powerful and dangerous. Coming up, we have a professor who has become the first human Wikipedia by blatantly believing the only sources that they use matter, aka not reliable. Don't miss this next on The Frontlines. Let me introduce you to Robin Mayers, a teacher at Dana Hills High School in California who teaches heads I win, tails you lose when it comes to her political preferences. This proves that some of the most intense indoctrination is coming from high school teachers. Confidential recordings of Robin's classes have revealed her hatred toward conservative students and ideas alike. She's been caught on tape saying Black Lives Matter riots are actually peaceful protests, and that BLM is 93% peaceful. That conservative elected officials will have to answer for their objections to the 2020 election results. And any news source that does not align with her personal worldview needs to be turned off. I'm sure she wasn't one that had to answer for her objections to the 2016 election results. And by the way, where did she get 93% peaceful for BLM? I love how there's a peaceful meter for protests now. Buildings on fire, 77% peaceful. Shooting someone in the head, 58% peaceful. Election fraud, 100% dangerous. Mayers actually said in class to her students, if your news sources are saying something other than what I'm saying now, turn it off. Wow, pompous much? Forget History 101 when you can take Dictator 101. And so much for teaching critical thinking skills in high school. I guess we're just going to focus on building a small army of leftists instead. School papers are going to be a lot easier now that you can only use 5 credible leftist-approved sources. Regurgitation is the new research. Robin Mayers, you're on our list. And all you other educators out there, keep it up, and you just might make our professor watch list. We're back and heading to OHIO, where 2 students at Little Miami High School were recently suspended from their football team after they dared to carry a thin blue line pro-police officer flag onto the field. And this wasn't just for any football game, but a game featuring a tribute dedicated to 9/11 first responders. How shameful! Get this, both of the players have parents in the local police and fire departments, but nevertheless were suspended from their team for supporting first responders during a first responders tribute football game. Yes, I am serious. If holding up an American flag in America is seen as oppressive, then obviously holding up a first responders flag at a first responders game is not allowed. Because all of this makes sense, right? What is wrong with these people? Of course, they were almost immediately reinstated onto the team as soon as uproar surged nationwide over the decision. And the Little Miami School Board president quickly started backtracking, saying, "This district enjoys an outstanding relationship with our local police and fire agencies." If that's not the most classically leftist apology, I don't know what is. Dear Little Miami School Board, what was going through your head when you decided to have a game that supported police and fire departments and then prohibited people from actually supporting them? Logic, people, you have none. In the time of COVID-19, mask mandates, and mandatory vaccines, it's hardly surprising that high school students are being treated differently based on their vaccination status. But one school is taking things way too far. Southfield Regional Academic Campus in Michigan actually held a prom last spring to which vaccinated students could attend for free, while unvaccinated students had to pay $80 out of pocket to attend. The superintendent of the school district said in a public statement, "It's not a violation of the law, as we're not requiring individuals to receive the vaccine, nor are we prohibiting those without a vaccine from attending," but failed to answer a question from Breitbart on whether she believed the 2-tiered price structure would be a form of discrimination. Of course she didn't. These leftists are so sneaky. You're right, you're not requiring vaccines, but you are legitimately segregating people based on medical choice. Just because you're not violating the law doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. Turns out the virus is really that smart, you guys. We found out that it only came out after 10 p.m., so we closed everything down at night. It can only infect you when you stand up at a restaurant, but not when you're eating. Standing 6 feet apart in line to get on the airplane is necessary, but sitting right next to someone and sharing your armrest is totally safe. And now, if you pay $80 as an unvaccinated student to go to prom, you solve the coronavirus crisis entirely. Never mind the fact that vaccinated people are still getting infected too. Pay the virus away, or if you're big pharma, pay to keep the virus alive. Either way, the corrupt people are making all the money, and that's how you slow the spread of COVID-19. I'm so glad it's only taken us a year and a half to figure this out. We're wrapping things up, literally, in Chicago, Illinois, where the Chicago Public School District announced it will require teachers not just in high school, but starting in 5th grade to provide free condoms to students aged 10 and up. Yeah, you heard that right. We aren't just talking about hormonal teenagers in high school health class anymore. The left's agenda has become so powerful, it has invaded a 10-year-old's 5th grade classroom with free condoms. The district claims the program is an ongoing effort to mitigate the spread of sexually transmitted diseases, including HIV infection and unintended pregnancy. As of this semester, 600 public schools have received free condoms to provide to students, including many elementary schools. This is a direct assault on the innocence of children. The left usually projects racism onto non-racists and oppression onto free speech, but projecting sex onto children is its own form of evil. The left has sexualized children so much that we now have to protect kids from the sexual exploits that they are constantly encouraging. If you're a parent and you don't know what your children are learning, don't wait until high school to ask the right questions. It may be very soon that your 5th grader starts getting free condoms in class, and something tells me your child's teacher isn't going to say anything to you about it. Indoctrination is this bad, and if we don't do something about it now, it will be beyond our help. If you're a high school student with a similar experience of indoctrination, we want to hear your story. Let us know in the comments, and that's your State of Campus. We've said it before and we'll say it again. What happens on college campuses never stays on college campuses. And today we're seeing the damaging effects of indoctrination as it trickles down into every level of education right before our very eyes. The pro-socialism, pro-abortion, anti-law enforcement, and anti-American narrative has become the mainstream for high school students and even younger Americans as they head to school each day. And it's up to us to take a stand and protect America's youth. Here's the good news. No matter how bleak things may seem, there are always bold individuals willing to fight for the future of America on the front lines of education. The question is, will you be one of them too? This is your voice, your stories, your fight. Together, we are on the front lines.